This particular expedition is put together, it's a very, very special project. It's designed to enable business people who are already successful to develop their leadership to a much higher level than normal. One can go to various business schools around the world, one can read books, one can get the 7 habits of highly successful leaders, and you know, not one of those things makes a blind bit of difference. The unfortunate thing is that when we're put in a difficult situation, we forget all that stuff that we learnt with our head, and we always revert to what we last did with our bodies. So this expedition is going to go back to Greenland and is going to take 4 people who are aspiring to develop their leadership, and we're going to learn leadership by doing it, not by reading about it. So that when these people are then looking to develop themselves and their businesses even further, what they'll fall back on is what they last did, which is the real stuff. Now this expedition is, it's going to be in the field for a month. We've got a fantastic field crew of 8 people, which includes some guys who are here tonight. We've got Greg Bergman on sound, part of our film crew, who was with us in 1986, and he's agreed to come back this year to do the sound as well. Greg went on after the expedition to the Arctic to get into film work, and was recently nominated for an Oscar award for his work with Sean Penn in The Thin Red Line. So he's going to be a good hand in the Arctic. Michael Dillon is our Director of Photography, and Michael of course used to be Ed Hillary's personal filmmaker, and if there's a place on earth that Mike hasn't been yet, it probably doesn't exist. He's been everywhere, and in order to get fit for this particular expedition, he's going to go up Mount Kilimanjaro, across the Simpson Desert, and then the Kokoda Track. And Ronnie hasn't done the Kokoda Track. You might like to give him a few pointers about what it's really like, because not only is he doing it, he's actually got to carry the camera and film other people. I don't know if that's possible. I'd warn him off right now if I were you. So we've also got Jeff Rosamond, a good pal who was with me in Tasmania only recently, who's going to be taking care of the field management. We've got Dr. Ben Madison, who's currently leading a trip to Antarctica, having just done some climbs in Patagonia, and he's going to be in charge of our mountain work, and a couple of other people yet to be decided. But what I put together is the most fantastic field crew that you could possibly imagine. And now what we're going to do is recruit 4 really good, enthusiastic business people who want to develop their leadership skills in the crucible of a real leadership expedition. And when I say a real leadership expedition, we're going to be incredibly busy. First of all, we've got to go to 2 places and lay some commemorative plaques to explorers. Secondly, we've got to undertake some scientific work for the Danes. One of those is going to be looking at the depth of fjords, what they call bathymetry. The Danes want to go over there and do some work in the fjords, but nobody's ever done any work in the fjords of East Greenland before. We don't know how deep they are. We don't know what the shape of the bottom is, or anything at all. We don't know where the last glacier stopped and left its terminal wall or sill underwater. So part of the preparation for the scientific work next year is we're going to go up there with the boats this year and do all of that preparatory work. We're also going to be looking at some of the glacial headwalls, and southeast Greenland is, in terms of climate change, the canary in the coal mine. Because it's below the Arctic Circle, it is therefore more susceptible to minute changes in climate, and we can make studies of what's really going on. Now, in some of my research comparing old charts and model satellite imagery, what I've discovered is that some of the glaciers, as they hit the sea, have not changed since the 1930s. They're still in the same position. Other glaciers have retreated. Some have actually advanced. Now this flies in the face of everything that we think we know about climate change and what's happening to the warming up there. So in other words, we have an uneven picture. So some of the work that we'll be doing is going up there and actually what they call ground truthing, which is simply going and looking. There is no magic to science in the field. Go and look, take notes, take pictures. We'll be able to send the pictures on the satellite straight back to the scientists in Denmark, and they can tell us what else they want looked at. So it's making a really powerful contribution to science because they can't get there. It's so difficult, it's so remote, it's so expensive, and they can't get the manpower to get there. So Australia is continuing to build our great scientific relationship with Denmark by undertaking some scientific work on their behalf. And I'm very pleased that we have Jan Rovenholt here tonight, who is the Danish Consul General for Melbourne, because if it wasn't for Jan and a couple of beers in Paran, where we decided that we'd take 2 boats instead of 1, that actually made this whole expedition kind of pop open in my mind to become the concept that it really is. So thank you, Jan. Too kind. We'll also, the area along the east coast is pretty much unknown in terms of archaeology, and even though Andy Long, one of Victoria's greatest archaeologists at the moment, an antiquarian bookseller, if you need some books, he's the man to go for. Not much is known about the ancient Inuit migrations and sites. So once again, in advance of some archaeological work done next year by Danish scientists, this year we're going to locate some sites where they can study. I thought it was a spider, but it's only a microphone. And also Dr. Ben Madison is an historian, and I've encouraged him to write a monograph on some of the sites of the 19th century Danish explorers who first got up that way. So all in all, we've got a lot of work to do, and that's before we go fishing, hunting for seal, photographing, and just the busyness of everyday life. You can't believe how busy and difficult just living in the Arctic is. You've got to get your boat somewhere, you've got to get everything off the boats, you've got to create a campsite. Jeff, are you listening? This is your job. And then you've got to pack it all up again, and if it starts raining, and so on and so forth. So just daily life takes up a lot of time, much less that. And then lastly, of course, I managed to find an island which has something like 16 peaks of 1,000 metres or greater, anything up to 1,750 metres, which is about 7,500 feet. And it's an island, and it's tucked away in amongst the fjords. It looks like the fjords, but it's got a moat around it. It's called Skjold, which is the island of King Skjold, who is famous in mythology for killing a polar bear with his bare hands. And so this island is like a crown of mountains, all capped with snow. And we're going to attempt to climb 4 of these mountains. So each one of our deputy leaders, who will be signing in over the next month, will get to make a first ascent of a virgin Arctic peak and put their name to it if they wish. They can apply for that. So we're going to be extremely busy. But that's not the reason we're going there. The reason I've put this expedition together is not just to do that work, although that work is very important. But what I want to do is to change the way that leadership is understood, that leadership is thought about in the world today. And we face a chronic misunderstanding and a chronic shortage of real leaders. People who will talk straight and take what they get, who won't be talking through spin doctors. People who will face up. And Ron, you would know about that as one of the greatest sports motivators that this country's ever known. You never pulled any punches, you told it like it was, so that the audience, the players, got it like it was, so that they could do something with it. And what we lack today is leaders of substance. The newspapers recently after the floods in Queensland, journalists were wanting to contrast the leadership of our head of police in Victoria after the bushfires. He said, I can't change the course of the bushfires, so therefore I'll go to lunch with my friends. Whereas the Premier of Queensland didn't say, I can't change the course of the floods. She said, I need to be there for my people. I need to be there to make a difference so that they can see this place has some leadership, they can see the place cares about what they're doing, and I will roll up my sleeves and I will get out there and I will be present for my people. Now that is real leadership. Nobody trained Anna Bligh in how to do that. She did not go to an MBA course. She did not read any books on the subject. It just flowed from her heart. That is real leadership in action. Now, in the way that I'm approaching leadership, I have a credo. It sounds simply this. Leadership is neither born nor taught, which is to say, it doesn't matter whether it's a Shackleton or somebody who went to a business school. We're missing the point, because all of the greatest leaders in our society were always associated with a great event, the third leg of the pot. So without a great event, our leadership simply cannot come out. We cannot find it. So what I then say is that leadership is circumstance calling forth a champion. And that can be any champion, anywhere, and at the enterprise level, it could be any person at any time of the day, anywhere in the organisation that says, I will do something, I will make a difference. I will make a stand for what needs to be stood for. Now, if we had somebody at the top of a business who said, that's the kind of culture I want, because it empowers everybody in the place, everybody wants to come to work and make a difference, then we've got a completely transformed and transformational sense of leadership. And if we had that at the political level, the not-for-profit level, the business level, and in our everyday lives, we wouldn't need spin doctors. We wouldn't need to fudge things, and people would know where they stood, and people are free to grow and to get the acknowledgement that they deserve. And that is what this expedition is all about, to take 4 people and show them that no matter how much money they've got, how much success they've got, how much status they've got, how much power they think they wield, take them out into the Arctic where they've got none of those things. And there they are in a foreign environment that they've never been to before, they don't know anything about, and I'm going to give them a program of leadership that they've got to follow and make it happen. And they can't draw on anybody else except themselves. And that's when they need to look inside at not what they've made in life, but what they're made of. And that experience will allow people to really discover who they are as leaders. And when they come back to completely transform the organisations and the people who rely on them, and to release those very same things for their own people. This year is just the precursor of that. This year I'm going to give each of the 4 people, the deputy leaders, I'm going to give them a week at a time, 5-day working week at a time, the chance to run the entire expedition. And all of the stuff-ups and the fix-ups will be theirs alone. And I'll be there as a coach, so they'll have a sounding board, but they've got to figure it out. And they've got to take all of the brickbats and everything else that goes with it. And it's only by going through the crucible of fire and coming out the other end to say, my God, I did it. I actually did it. I am a changed person. And if any of you saw the King's Speech, you would have seen this stumbling, humble, incompetent, lacking self-confidence person who didn't want the job at all, walked into that booth, and 8 minutes later, a giant of a man, a true king, a real man, walked out of that booth 3 feet taller, and he was a king. And he didn't get that by reading about it or doing a course or getting a badge and a t-shirt. He got it by going through the crucible of fire to come out the other side saying, I am that person now. And once this expedition is done, I then want to make this as a model which Melbourne exports to the rest of the world, once again in small doses. But if I can change 4 people, and each person can change 1,000 other people who work for them or are inspired by them, pretty soon this business and my philosophy and everything that I've learnt the hard way can make a profound difference to the way that leadership is run around the world.